Go.
Okay, I'm going to demonstrate the table saw here. This is a pretty unique table saw. This is called the SawStop table saw, okay? It's a very high-end table saw. It's actually probably the best table saw on the market right now, okay? If you were to go to like Home Depot or Menards or Home Improvement Store, you can buy portable table saws, but this one is far superior, obviously. It's got a big steel frame and everything, but the actual special thing about this saw is that once it detects any kind of moisture in the object that it's cutting, the blade will go down into a block of aluminum and stop. Okay, that's why it's called SawStop. So it's very difficult to cut yourself on this, and that's why this technology was created, so that if your finger accidentally touches the blade, as that blade digs a little bit into your finger, the blade will stop, it will get pushed down inside of itself and hit a big aluminum block, and the blade will stop. Okay? So, what do we use the table saw for? We use the table saw for rip cutting. Rip cutting is going, for the most part, along the grain of a board, and we need to make the board a certain width, okay? So the plans say you need a board that's 2 feet wide and 2 feet long. I'm sorry, 2 inches wide, 2 feet long. You're going to set this table saw up so that the fence is 2 inches away from the blade, and you're going to run your board through it, okay? So, like most of the tools, here's the table. This is what we call the fence, okay? This has got a nice tape measure or ruler right here, and it has these little bubbles so that you can get it close to where it needs to be, okay? So we're going to move the fence over, and if we have to cut a 2-inch strip, we're going to come over here and we're going to get this side close to 2 inches. Okay? But sometimes this isn't calibrated quite right, and just to double check, with the machine off, you're going to take a tape measure and you can measure to the inside of the blade. Okay? The blade has teeth, and each tooth goes in an opposite direction. Okay? So you find one of the teeth of the blade that is pointing to the inside of the fence, and to get really precise, you measure from the fence to that tooth, okay? So I would lift this up, make sure the machine is off before you do this. You're going to take your tape measure and measure it to the tooth, and that's 2 inches, okay? For the most part, I'm going to have this calibrated so that you wouldn't really have to do that step, but just to show you that's how you do it, okay? So, in a nutshell, basically we turn this baby on and we slide a board through it and it cuts it to the width that we want. But there's a few very important steps that we need to go through before that. This switch, okay, it's a 2-stage switch. The switch on the right energizes the system, and then this paddle, when you pull this, it's going to turn it on, okay? So, if you didn't notice, when you turn it on, these lights will blink, and then once this left light is green, you pull this up, and it starts the machine. Okay? So I've got it set at 2 inches, I've got my board. Now, your board should have a finished edge. We're going to use the joiner in order to achieve that, okay? As you can see, this board has a rough edge on it, and then it has a nice smooth edge. If you look down it, that smooth edge should be nice and straight. That is the edge that you want against the fence, okay? The procedure of sending this through, you want it to go in one smooth motion. You do not want the board to stop while it is being cut. And once you get close enough, you're going to use something called a push stick to push the board all the way through. Okay? So we don't want it to stop. We want it flat on the table, flat against the fence, and we want it to go in one nice smooth motion. Okay? Things that could go wrong. Your fingers get too close to the guard. If there is a kickback, which would make this blade get pinched or send the board shooting that way. You never want to stand directly behind this. You never want to have anybody else stand directly behind this. So as you're using this table saw, you're kind of hanging out on a little island here by yourself. Make sure nothing's behind you, especially if somebody's sitting in the chair right behind you. Make sure they move. Okay? The push sticks are generally just on the table over here. They look something like this. They have a handle, and this little piece will guide the wood through it. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and fire this up, and I'm going to show you how to cut a 2-inch board on this machine. Okay? So that's already on. You turn it on. As I start, I'm going to push this against the fence. Got to lock this down. I'm going to have it against the fence, and as I'm moving up, I'm going to do it without going through the blade real quick. So I'm going to start right here, the front part flat on the table. I'm going to push with my left hand so it's up against the fence, and I'm going to slide it with both hands, one fluid motion, but with my left hand I don't want to push the board against the blade. So as my left hand gets close to the blade, I'm going to back my left hand up and continue to feed it so that I'm not pushing the board up against the blade as I'm feeding it through. Once I get kind of close, I'm going to grab my push stick and I'm going to go like this, and then with one hand I'm going to slide the board all the way through. Okay? So here's what it looks like when you do it in real life. I just checked, this measurement is really close. I'm going to put it on 2 inches, lock it in place, turn it on, make sure nobody's behind me. Keep it flat against the fence. Keep my left hand pushing it against the fence, but not pushing it against the blade. And try to go in one nice, fluid motion, keeping the board flat on the table. Students like to wiggle it up and down. Keep it flat on the table as you go through it. Take my left hand and move it back. Now take my push stick. Let go of the left hand. And shut it off. Okay? Don't move those boards until the blade is stopped. Take the piece I cut off. And now I have a nice 2-inch strip. Okay? So, important things. Keep the board flat on the table, flat against the fence. You want to push it through in one motion. You want to use a push stick so that your fingers aren't between the blade and the fence. You want to make sure that nobody is sitting behind you. Okay?